And welcome back to the Law and Crime Network, everyone. Aaron Keller along with you for the next hour here in the afternoon. Prosecutors' opening statements in the Cheyenne Harris case out of Iowa. Judge Quinton Washington is on the line with me here on the Law and Crime Network to talk about this case. Judge, good to see you this afternoon.
Good to see you as well. Aaron, how are you?
I'm well. So I listened to this, and I'm hearing much of the same verbiage that we heard during the trial there in Iowa involving the baby's father. Now, so this prosecutor basically had one run at this with the evidence against the father, and now he's got another run of it with the evidence against the mother. It's almost a carbon copy, almost a perfect copy of the opening statement that he gave the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, from your perspective, watching this go by, watching the way he presented the evidence, what did you make of his demeanor, his tone? Believable? The jury is buying this, do you think?
I definitely think so. I mean, at the end of the day, if he's successful the first go-around, why change the formula for the second go-around? And ultimately, you have a series of facts, if they're to be believed, that are so gruesome that it turns your stomach listening to the level of detail that he goes into about the level of neglect that was happening here. And that's enough to color anything, because how does it get to this point, given that you're supposed to be caring for a child?
And the reaction from the mother that we've seen throughout this case, and there yet again, a lot of times she didn't want to look at the reality of what she was facing, both factually and, of course, as far as criminal charges go as well.
Right, and that's definitely true, because ultimately, and I'm thinking about this as a parent, and I know that some of the other people that are listening are thinking about this as a parent. For it to devolve to get that far meant that there was a huge problem, and that huge problem should have been addressed way before now. And so, granted, everybody has difficulty in raising kids, but when it gets to this point where the child allegedly has been sitting out there for this long and has had this level of neglect take place, that's infinitely problematic when you're trying to have a defense.
Exactly. We're going to take a break here on the Law and Crime Network. When we come back, we'll be listening to how the defense framed this case up from the beginning. Did what the defense said at the beginning ultimately play out in evidence, and did it influence the outcome? We'll discuss that when we return.
You're not going to hear in this case about the typical type of actions you might hear when you hear about child abuse. You're not going to hear about injuries. You're not going to hear about broken bones. You're not going to hear about bruises. You're not going to hear about any purpose on Ms. Harris's part to harm Sterling. You're not going to hear about any evil design or any plan or any ill will towards Sterling. You're not going to hear any evidence that she's evil. That's because she's not evil, and this case is not murder.
Wow, that was a brief opening statement from the defense. Sometimes less is more, though. Judge Washington, would you agree?
Yes, I definitely would, because when you go into this level of specifics, you have to have a credible alternative theory that is enough to get a not guilty, not that there were issues surrounding the mental health, et cetera, because that's not going to get an exoneration from the charge.
They tried to really humanize her, and curious to know, do you think that worked?
You want to do that, but I think that would have more of an effect on sentencing as opposed to the actual trial of the facts. Because the more you hear about the actual facts, you humanize someone, but when they're participating in dehumanizing conduct, that's something completely different. And so that's what's happening now, is that when you listen to the facts about what happened, how could a human have done this to a human who's defenseless, is something that quickly the prosecution can jump back up and say.
Exactly. Okay, let's listen to some testimony now. This is one of the first responders on the scene, a nurse who answered the call that a baby needed dire help.
Apartment?
Yes.
What did you do?
So I pulled up, and I pulled right up, and I saw a man, a woman, and a little girl, and I got out of my car and I went running up to them and said, "Where's the baby?" nobody was showing any emotion, and the man goes inside, and I said, "Show me." And so he took me inside. We walked in, and we went to the back bedroom. He took me to the back bedroom, and it was dark, and it was stuffy, and there was a stench of urine there. I was looking for a crib. I couldn't see a crib. I said, "Where's the baby?"
Did the room have windows in it?
There was blankets over the one window that was in there, so that it didn't show any light.
What did the room feel like?
It was hot. It was stuffy. There was the stench of urine.
What did you do?
Well, after I did my assessment and realized that I couldn't do anything, I called back into the sheriff's department and asked for the sheriff to come and another medical examiner.
Why did you call the sheriff's department?
Because this was not right. Something was not right here.
Very difficult testimony there from a first responder who arrived at the scene to find this little baby, 4-month-old Sterling Cohen, dead. Judge Quinton Washington is still with me here on the Law and Crime Network. Judge, I've got maybe I'm a nitpicker here, but there was that part where the prosecutor said, when you saw Sterling, did you know there was nothing you could do? No objection there that the prosecutor was leading the witness.
Oh, no. And I think that that objection would have been sustained. But the issue is this. Ultimately, her being able to tell her set of facts, there's not much you can do about keeping most of what she's going to say from coming in, because it's going to come in. Because she had a first-hand observation, which is going to allow most of her testimony to come in.
Yeah, I mean, it may have been futile to object to it, but it would have kept the prosecutor on her toes there. So that's one thing that I noticed, and I noticed it specifically because of the context. During the first trial against the father, that first responder was asked an open-ended question about, is what happened next or something like that, or what did you see? And her response back was, I knew there was nothing I could do. It was something along those lines. So this may just be the reality of this situation, that all of these people, or most of them, I should say, most of the witnesses and definitely the prosecutors, already had one round of questioning. And that witness basically said the same exact thing in the first case as she did in the second case. So I guess after a while, one just gets used to using the same words over and over again, and that may excuse it.
Well, but here's the other thing, too. You also, as the lawyer, you don't want to insert yourself into the case, because you want to come across as a neutral arbiter who's asking questions but still at the same time trying to be an advocate. So if she jumps in at every opportunity, it then causes people to have feelings which could be negative about her, because this woman's just trying to tell her experience from working her job as a first responder who's there on the scene. And so to keep interrupting her and cutting her off may cause more harm to the credibility of the defense attorney than good.
I agree with that as well. You have to tread lightly sometime, especially when it's emotional testimony. An update, though, to tell everyone about now in the McStay family murder case against Chase Merritt in Southern California. Apparently, that case is indeed going to continue. We've been allowed to go into the courtroom and set up. This case has been on hold all afternoon here on the East Coast and all day there on the West Coast because a juror was involved in some kind of an accident. We're hoping to have a feed up and some kind of testimony for you folks watching as soon as we get it. We're going to take a quick break and be back with more after this.
When you were talking to the parents, had law enforcement arrived yet?
Yes, then Reed Palo came in and he took them in the bedroom, the other bedroom across from where the baby was.
And what did you do at that point?
I left.
Why did you leave?
Because I wasn't feeling too good.
Where did you go after you left?
I went in my car and went out on my route.
Did you stop?
Yes,
Why?
because I had to throw up.
And why did you throw up?
Because it was so sad. And had I known that child was there all that time, every day I drove by, I could have done something. And that day I was just too late, and I couldn't do it.
Testimony there from a mail carrier who was at the scene and just couldn't stomach it. Judge Quinton Washington, I did have one concern about her testimony where she said that she thought that the defendant, the child's mother, should have been screaming and carrying on about this. I would have had to object there and say, look, not everyone processes grief the same way. What are your thoughts?
No, I definitely agree. That was one thing that stuck out. The other thing that stuck out was when the testimony was elicited, left the scene, and what she was thinking about should have happened and what she should have done. I would have objected to that as well, because I thought that was highly prejudicial.
Well, not only that, but again, I mean, clearly this witness has observations that are relevant, but, is she an expert on grief and mourning? And I think the answer to that would have been no. Let's go now to the chief deputy, who was also one of the first responders.
Who they were at the time, but later identified as those people.
So you go back to the room, correct?
Yes.
Were you the first law enforcement officer there?
Yes.
When you went back to the room, what did you do?
Jeremy McGrath was standing there, and as was Tony Frederick, and they weren't doing anything as far as resuscitation efforts. They were just looking down at the swing. It was odd because I couldn't see the baby. The swing was turned away from the door towards the exterior wall, so they were standing, on the other side. So they were able to see the baby at that point. I couldn't. I could just see their faces. And they weren't trying to do anything with the baby, they both basically indicated that this wasn't for them, it was for me, as far as the call, that something I needed to investigate. So,
when you went into the baby's room, or where the baby was, what did it feel like?
It was stifling is one word I would use. It was heavy, stale, kind of an oppressive air, and it was a combination of the no air movement and that stale, horrible smell of feces and urine, just really strong and oppressive, and there was just no air movement. It felt very hot.
Was the smell worse in that room?
Yeah, literally every breath I took from the time I came into the hallway, into the apartment, it got worse. As I came through the apartment, it got worse. And by the time I got to the bedroom, it was overpowering. It was I don't know if I gagged. I don't know if I got, I'm not usually affected by odors all that much. But in that room, it was like you didn't want to breathe. And we talked a little bit about them as a family and what the living arrangements were. And she explained that Zach had worked that previous night and had woken up, or she had woken up and discovered Sterling had died, and then woke up Zach.
And that's what she told you there in the apartment?
Yes.
You said that the defendant, Cheyenne Harris, was holding Nala. Did you make observations of Nala?
She looked to be a normal height, weight, size, active, alert, attentive toddler.
There was nothing about her appearance or condition that concerned you?
No.
So you were taking basic information from the defendant and Zach Cullen. Was there a point in time that you decided to talk to each alone?
Yes, often, especially in a family dynamic like that where I don't know, I've never met any of these people before. My normal practice would probably be to talk to the woman, her mom or wife, first separately, just to try and gather some information about a set of circumstances. So I asked if we could step out and talk separately, and then Zach took care of Nala while we stepped out of that room. I went into the living room area there. I was going to sit at a kitchen table or a couch or whatever. They really didn't have a good place to sit. So
that testimony from the chief deputy who was at the scene after the parents reported that little baby dead.